What beliefs best comport with our deepest desires? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher's Bookshelf, where we consider a book from a philosophical perspective. Now, I'm not sure if you followed this channel for any amount of time, but if you do, you may have noticed that I've put out one video in the past 4 months or so. And I have a couple hundred videos, I believe, throughout the last couple years. So here's what happened. In the end of February, I started to go through some severe panic attacks. And there was a lot of fun and exciting anxiety and depression that went along with that. And I'm still I still am getting some of the anxiety and depression, but for the most part, the panic attacks are gone, and that's good. That's great, actually. But in that time, it was nearly impossible to work on the channel. I have my university teaching job. I also have to teach. I teach some other classes on the side, like high school and classes that just to sort of keep afloat. So yeah. And by the way, if you want to support this channel so that I can do videos and not have to focus on, just making ends meet, if you go to my website, thephilosopher.com, I sell t-shirts. Here's one. I don't know if you can see that too well, but that's Thomas Aquinas on a shirt. Yeah, it's been nearly impossible to work on videos, but I have spent a lot of time reading books. I got a request for more book reviews, and although it's not a fictional book like Sophie's World was, or Atlas Shrugged, or what else did I do? I've done Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That was a sick book. It's a book that's written, to non-philosophers, but it does contain a lot of philosophy. So it's got a philosophical appeal, which is Our Deepest Desires by Gregory Gansel. It starts by noting that each one of us has a core identity made up of our desires and beliefs. So our desires, the things that we love, our beliefs, the things that we think are true about the world and about ourselves. There are a lot of non-core identity beliefs and desires that we have. So, for example, I'm a philosophy professor, but that's not, at the root of who I am. I could lose my job someday, and I would still be me. If I made that at the core identity, I guess you could put that at your core identity, but it would be a bad choice, because who knows what could happen. Or I'm a Californian. I live in California, but it might be the case that taxes rise so much that I have to move. And I know you're thinking that it's going to be too expensive for a philosophy professor to live there. Shockingly, if you were getting into the philosophy game because you wanted to be rich, sorry, man, we don't actually make that much money. So bad choice. But our core identity would be our deepest beliefs and desires. And I think we're not always truly conscious of what those are, of what is it that we hold to be dearest. And only in like a time of crisis will these kinds of things come out, where we see it. And that's because when our deepest beliefs and desires come into conflict with one another, or conflict with something in the real world, we're left with this feeling, so the book says, of dissonance. This feeling that things are just not right, that something about what we want or something about what we believe is messed up or is out of order or needs to be revised or something like that. So to give you an example, and this isn't a core identity example, but an example of how this works, of how this dissonance works. Growing up, I would go to visit my grandparents in San Diego, and they would take me sometimes to Padres games. So I grew up kind of loving Tony Gwynn and Padres, but I was pretty young. And at about high school, I just stopped watching baseball altogether for several decades. And I live in Orange County. We started to go, just by a series of accidental events, I went one year to like 3 or 4 Angels games. And it was pretty fun. And I hold the following belief, that you should be a fan of a team that is some way connected to you, if possible, especially, a local team. And I figure, okay, I'm an Orange Countyan, right? Orange Countyite. So I'm going to be an Angels fan, right? Like, I know I've never liked the Angels before. I used to like the Padres a long time ago, but I'm going to go for the Angels. So I switched, and Angels were my primary love. And I think I probably held that belief of you should be a hometown fan higher than my love for the Padres. But in any case, a few years back, like, it started to become pretty apparent that the owner of the Angels was not going to allow them to put themselves into a winning position. He wants to be the general manager, and he's not a good general manager. So he won't hire the people to actually implement like good strategy. The farm system is totally wrecked in the Angels system. And I started to realize I had a deeper desire, a deeper love, which is I love teams that do the right thing, that do everything they can the right way to put themselves into a winning position for the fans. And whether or not they win, I don't really care all that much. Like of course I care, but what I really want is that they're doing the best that they can. And so it started to frustrate me, right? And all of a sudden I started to look around like, I don't really like this team right now. I don't know what to do. But I have this belief that you should not abandon a team lightly, and a belief that you should not be a fair weather fan. So I look back to the Padres and I thought, you know what? Maybe I teach in San Diego. I teach in Chula Vista, which is so San Diego. It's basically Tijuana. But I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to buy myself a Padres hat. So I felt this like weird, like, tug, like I don't love the Angels anymore. I love the Padres more than the Angels now because of a deeper desire to cheer for a team that, is doing their all, is not getting in their own way, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, you can sort of see how this dissonance starts to play itself out. And then you can solve this dissonance. You'll end up solving it either by reordering your loves or beliefs, your desires or beliefs. So I might reorder my desires so that the Padres are higher love than the Angels. Or I might revise one of my beliefs. So I might say you should be a hometown fan, except if you have some kind of connection to the team. Like I have a connection because I work in San Diego and my grandparents used to take me to Padres. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? My point being is that we end up making these decisions because we feel this, inner turmoil when our beliefs and our desires don't match up. Now, when we do so, whatever is deepest is typically what stays. So for me, it was that desire to cheer for a team that is doing its all to win for the fans. That's what I want, not egos, not, anything else. So the deepest thing stays and something else gets revised or reordered. And typically, so says the book, our deepest desire or belief is going to be a desire. Typically, what we love is going to show more about who we are than what we believe. Usually the beliefs are the ones that get. And that's not to say that that's right or wrong. That's just to say that's typically what we do. The thing that we love the most, we're willing to change our mind about stuff just to keep that same love. So with that in mind, the main argument of the book is that the Christian story, the story of Christianity, best comports with our deepest desires, as obviously saying that most of us, at least, possibly all of us, have a core set of desires that in common, and that core set of desires best fits with the story of Christianity, which I thought was an interesting project. That's a bold claim. So I wanted to see how he fleshed that out. But important to note, and he notes this in the introduction, is that he's not trying to prove Christianity is true. He's trying to show that if it's a case that you don't want to be a Christian because you don't want Christianity to be true because you think that it's going to interfere with one of your core desires or beliefs, quite the contrary, it actually is going to match up really well with your core desires or beliefs, better than many of the other belief systems that are possible. Which is interesting because when I was in high school, junior year, I became an atheist because I thought Christianity was not what I wanted, right? Like I thought, like, there are things that I want to do, and Christianity is all about don't do X, Y, and Z, and therefore it's just, getting in my way of being happy. So I became an atheist. I actually became, full disclosure, I became a Christian at age 24. So I changed my mind about that. Maybe that's a story for a different time. But I thought this project then would be interesting because like it sort of seemed like something that I had experienced myself. Like I thought at one time the story of Christianity was not in tune with who we are, who we want to be, what we really desire, and then came to find out at 24 I changed my mind and I thought, no, actually it does. But again, this isn't to say that this proves Christianity is true. It's just to say that if that's what was holding you back, then never fear. So how does Gansel do it? He picks 4 core desires, 4 core loves that we have that he believes that everybody shares, or at least most people share, and shows how Christianity matches up with them. I'll pick one of those just to give you an example of what he's offering here. And that is personhood. So it seems to Gansel, and I would agree, that a lot of our loves revolve around persons, revolve around personhood in general. Both the fact that we are persons and the fact that we relate to persons. So what do I mean? Well, I think the deepest desire probably is happiness, like we want to be happy. And yet, what does happiness exactly mean? Well, whatever it means, it can't mean just pleasure, right? It can't mean just enjoying yourself. Because you could imagine a person who just drugged themselves into enjoyment, right? And they did that until their end of their lives, and they would be experiencing pleasure their entire life, but you'd feel that something would be missing, right? You feel that like they didn't really live though, And a great quote for you. You can write this one down. Heraclitus, pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus. If happiness were pleasure, then we would call oxen happy when they find bitter vetch to eat. I have that memorized. I don't know why, but yeah, like if being happy was just feeling good, then, well, when oxen find puke and eat it, they're happy. They're feeling pleasure, right? But is that what we really want? Do we really want to just have that kind of happiness, just pleasure? It seems like we want something deeper than that. We want our lives, we want our actions, we want our work to all have meaning and purpose, and that's the kind of happiness we're looking for, not just, we do also want the pleasure, but it's not just the pleasure we want, because, if that were the case, then we would be satisfied with a totally drugged up life. No, it seems like what we want is more than that. And notice those things are all tied to your personhood. Persons consider meaningfulness. They consider purpose, right? Rocks don't, even though a rock might roll down a hill, it's not an agent having an action that it's accomplishing, right? It's just doing what it has to do. So it seems like our personhood is intimately tied to our deepest desire of happiness. Well, on the story of Christianity, personhood is primary. Why is it primary? Because God is a personal being. So it's not like this universe is just some accidental, fumbling out of comets and quarks and whatever, just spilling out all over the place. It's the handiwork of a personal being that had purpose and intention and meaning in creating all these things. And when God created us, he created us in his image to be like him, right? To be persons in that way like him. So God created us to be things with meaningful lives, with purposeful work, with meaningful actions, and all those things that we want most deeply. So the story makes a lot of sense out of why we desire these things. Why do we desire these things? Because the whole universe was the result of a personal creation, a personal being creating all things. Now compare that story with the story of atheism, which Gregory Gansel typically will pit the two against each other. Compare the two because they're good foils, not because they're the only two options out there, but it kind of helps to see why Christianity is fulfilling this role so well. In atheism, we're all the result of a pure accident, right? This is just could happen in a number of different ways. And while it is the case, I think, that you can make the argument that we end up being pretty absurd beings, so that Christianity would explain better the way things are than atheism. That's not quite the argument, right? It's not an argument for the truth of Christianity. Really, it's an argument that look at how our lives would be then. Our lives would be very awkward. We don't have meaning and purpose in our actions and our work. We might have subjective meaning and purpose, right? It might be the case that I feel like my work is meaningful, but there is no, the universe wasn't created with this kind of meaning and purpose. So that I feel like my work is meaningful is something that's just purely subjective. It's in my own mind, which is the very definition of imaginary, right? Like it doesn't actually exist out there in the real world, but that's what we want, right? We want our work and our actions and our lives to have purpose and meaning, whether or not anybody believes it, just as it is out there objectively. Christianity, the story of Christianity fulfills that desire that we have, whereas the story of atheism goes against that, right? It's a very awkward fit. Not only that, not only is it the case that we think our own personhood and things tied to our own personhood are so important, but the personhood of other people, relationships that we have, are also, like base level, most important desires. So love becomes like the driving force behind almost everything we do. Even the most loners of us, right? The people who are the biggest loners. I had a friend in the Air Force who he's from Oklahoma, and he said his goal in life was to be able to retire to a house with so much property that he could pee off the front porch and without worrying about anybody watching him. And I was like, well, that's a goal, I guess. I don't know. That was because he hated people. He liked me, when you hate everybody else and you like somebody, then I feel that's kind of a compliment. But he was married, and he had some friends, So even he, who wanted to be such a loner, required some kind of human contact, required some kind of love. It's a deep-seated desire that we have. Well, in the Christian story, we actually have an even better explanation than pretty much almost any other story. In the beginning, there was God, and God made all other things, but God was also a Trinity, right? God was one being, but three persons in that one being. And I realize there's going to be some of you right at that very point that are going to be like, oh, okay, well, I give up, right? I can't deal with the Trinity. And I get the Trinity is bizarre, right? One essence, three persons. How is that possible? And it's not possible in anything that we've seen so far. But Gansel actually, I think, does a good job of explaining how we should look at mysteries like the Trinity. which is this. When we look at the quantum world, he doesn't say this, but I say this. When you look at the quantum world, there are some bizarre things. Like, you can't picture how an electron exists around a nucleus, right? We call valence shells, and we call it electron clouds, but they're not like clouds, right? That's not what they're like. They exist unlike anything else that we see in the macro level world. Now, if God is an infinite being, we should expect him to be a little bizarre, right? A little bit beyond our comprehension. And that's what the Trinity is. It's beyond our comprehension how that can happen, because there's nothing in this world that acts like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that God could be contradictory, right? So if God were one person and three persons at the same time, that's a contradiction. I'm not saying that that's possible. But I don't know how three people can share the same nature. Not really sure. But notice what it gives us. Before time existed, we have God in relation, right? In loving relation, these three beings, these three persons, I should say, not beings, but persons. And then creating reality, and the persons that God creates are all persons that require relationship, right? That require love. That makes even more sense, I believe, than a God that's not Trinitarian, right? A God that is a lone wolf, always existed as a person by himself or herself, and decides one day to create. I think that God would create a bunch of lonely people, right? Not people that are sad lonely, but people who don't require a relationship for their happiness. So the Trinitarian God then makes the most sense out of why we desire love so much, whereas other views, won't make quite as much sense. There are three other desires that he goes through in the book. Here it is again, by the way. I knew Gregory Gansel from another book. Let me see. Yeah, he had edited this book I got a long time ago, God and Time. 4 views on how God exists in time, with Paul Helm, Alan Paget, William Lane Craig, and Nicholas Wolterstorff. That's actually a pretty big list. I mean, that's a lot of heavy hitters. In any case, like I said, Gansel has 3 other desires that he points out that are deepest desires, and they are goodness, beauty, and freedom. And again, I won't get into them because then I'd just be reviewing the entire book, and you should buy the book and read it. Ultimately, yeah, I think the book was outstanding. If you remember what the purpose of the book is. The purpose of the book is not to prove that Christianity is true. The purpose of the book is to show that Christianity best comports with our deepest desires, so that, if you're looking at Christianity and thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to actually go. Remember, like, usually, like, we experience dissonance when we have competing beliefs and desires, and typically the deepest desires are what stays and the beliefs are what get changed. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, I have these deepest desires, and that belief system doesn't look like it's going to match up, so I'm going to look elsewhere. Never fear, you don't have to worry. And I'm not saying that that's how you're supposed to make your decisions, or that that's a good way to make your decisions on what's true or false. But it's to remove that hurdle. If you feel that is a hurdle. I do think, by the way, as a possible extension, you could use this book to argue for the truth of Christianity. So C.S. Lewis has an argument, I call the argument from happiness, that I haven't made a video on, saying that, it would be bizarre for us to exist with these deepest desires and yet the fulfillment of them not be a real thing. But that's something that, I don't know, you would take a whole another book and it would take a lot more argumentation. So anyway, our deepest desires, 2 thumbs up. If you have any questions on the book, anything you want to talk about from the book, please feel free to hit me up in the comments. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.